What if love is more than just a feeling? What if it's a universal force shaping how we understand ourselves, our community, and the world? Welcome to the Philosophy of Love, where we break down the science behind love, how it influences our minds, our behaviors, and the way we connect with humanity. Join us as we explore the psychology of love as a driving force for empathy, growth, and understanding. You're watching the Philosophy of Love podcast with Juan Lee and Dr. James Brockington.
Hello, everybody. Hi. Welcome to the Philosophy of Love, sponsored by Clear Journey, a nonprofit that supports individuals that are looking for answers to life's challenges. And today we are here with Dr. James Brockington, which is here with me every time we show up, because
as it should be.
He's the science, the science behind love that we need to discuss and talk about. So welcome. If this is your first time to Philosophy of Love, we want to welcome you and ask you, if it's something that you hear on this podcast, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our podcast. Well, our podcast is housed on Clear Journeys Inc. YouTube channel. But That's where we keep all of our podcasts there are on the Clear Journey YouTube channel. So by all means, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Alrighty. We are here going to pick it up where we left it off last time. And we were talking about the foundation of what thinking is all about. And we were talking about how the philosophy of a love mindset. And it's really the science behind the love mindset that we're talking about. And last time we were here, we were talking about, we really got really deep into a particular issue as it relates to how we react and respond to certain situations. Specifically, we were talking about in the moment, because we were talking about at the moment of conflict or confrontation. This time, we're going to even dig a little bit deeper. And as you can see, the name of our episode, this particular episode is called When Wrong Thinking Feels Normal, a love mindset reset, You know, what does it take for us to recognize, man, maybe we are thinking wrong? But, that's what we're going to talk about. But before we get started with that, let's just tell you some of the things that we got for you. If you go over to clearjourney.org, and here you go. If you go over to clearjourney.org, you'll find out more about Clear Journey and what we're all about. We are a nonprofit. We are a 501c3 nonprofit that if you have a need to want to support us, please feel free to go over there and do that. That's our website. If you want to contact us, you can go contact us at info@clearjourney.org and just put in the subject Dr. Brockington or myself, and you all can know more and we can answer questions. But by all means, if you have some questions that you want to have answered, please put them in our chat. That would be very helpful for us to be able to get back to you. In addition, if you go over to our website, you will see this right here. We want to give you this for free. It is no charge. Just go over and ask for it. It is something that's very important to us as it relates to your finances. It's one of our support pillars that we talk about at Clear Journey is your finances. And this book is How Do You Budgeting Made Easy, and the guide to taking charge of your money, which is critical in this journey called life. So feel free to go over there and take a look at that. Also, my book, Love Made Simple. Again, this is the foundation of Clear Journey and also the mindset that we talk about. And if you want to get a copy of that, you can also find the copy of that also over at clearjourney.org. So that being said, I think that is all that we are doing. In addition, we do have one other thing that we do once a month, and that is our real life talk. It's the fourth Saturday every month.
Right.
It is welcome to everyone. till we come and support each other. And we want you to be a part of it. So if you go over to our Clear Journey website, go to events, you will see the ability to register for the real life talk, Unity Through Love event that happens every fourth Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we want you to be there. So by all means, go over there, come on, support each other. And that's what we're going to be there to help each other navigate this thing called life a little bit better. And feel free. We want you to engage, want to be a part of it. We want to be able to help each other navigate this thing called life together. Each month we have a different topic that we start off on, but it's all about how do we navigate this thing called life with a love mindset? How do we do it? And this is the practical place where we do it every month. We want you to be a part of it. So come on out. Now, that's all been said. We're going to talk about when wrong thinking feels normal. Man,
Yes.
man,
Wrong thinking feels normal.
isn't that very apropos?
On so many levels. On so
Because
many profound
because
levels.
man, what are your thoughts about it? I mean, because
Well,
these are normal. I mean, we make the statement when wrong thinking is normal. That's not an oxymoron. I mean, that is not something that is.
no.
It is so appropriate because so. How do you address that? How do you even make
But
that a
you
statement?
you address it because of the significance of the power that exists between the connection formed in thinking, critical thinking, and reasoning. There is, and you'll see it's a trilogy, there are three distinct steps in thinking, critical thinking, and reasoning. They mirror the same three steps in behavioral adaptation and adjustment because your thinking is what enables you to engage in your acceptance. Your critical thinking reinforces your adjustment, and your reasoning becomes your acknowledgement of achievement and engagement. And they all are in synchronicity with the mind, the body connection to spirit. There's a three-pronged approach here: mind, body, spirit. And the focal point being the connectivity between mind and body. You tell yourself to do something, and that is what you are going to do, is the significance of that relationship. So when you tell yourself to think, quote unquote, wrong thinking, you behaviorally adapt to the structural limitation of the quote unquote wrong, and that becomes your behavioral pattern
Yeah, but
of engagement.
is that a consciousness? Is that a conscious decision to do wrong? Because I mean, this is critical in the sense of because we think that people are just if we were to associate bad with being wrong,
Mm-hmm.
if we were to associate bad with being wrong,
Right.
we think that people are bad intentionally.
How many times have you heard somebody say he was born evil or she was just bad from the start?
Yeah,
She's
we've
always
heard
been a
it, but
bad child. You
yeah, I've heard
you
that, but
see the driving forces from on an unconscious level where this is all resolving itself on an unconscious level.
mhm.
Okay. Unconscious is just that step below what is our level of focused and specifically aligned behavior, what we call consciousness. This is what we're doing. At an unconscious level where we're trying to sort all of this out, there is no separation point between what is considered good or bad. What is happening unconsciously is, are we effectively separating the circumstances and the situation from their ability to influence and outcome result. In essence, are we giving ourselves more power to make a choice as opposed to less power to make a choice? You see, people will tell you that your decisions matter. In essence, it is the choice that is most significant, because once you have made the choice, you have structurally aligned the process of application that becomes the decision.
Mm-hmm.
In
Mm-hmm.
many ways, it's like stacking up dominoes. Once you put the dominoes in order and you hit them, they will fall in the order in which you arranged them. Hence, the moment you have made a choice, your actions are going to be corresponding to that choice you have made.
Yeah. So,
Okay, so
so go ahead.
the thing is to clarify the significance of the meaning and the purpose of your choice. The meaning and the purpose of your choice is your acknowledgement of your circumstances and your situation. The moment somebody can see, and this is the difference between wrong and right, the moment somebody can see that it's not really a discussion of wrong and right, it's a discussion of productive and unproductive. Okay? It's a discussion of productive and unproductive. Then you've now placed yourself in what corresponds most closely to the concept of a mindset.
That's very interesting, because this is good stuff here, because I wasn't I, productivity
Productivity. Mm-hmm.
is crucial to the life experience.
And because it is crucial to the life experience, the expectation is that the more I enhance my productivity, the more I enhance my life expectancy.
Okay, but again, this is deep, because now my choices now are based out of understanding that this life experience is about productivity. If
And
I'm
thus,
not if I'm not aware of that,
okay, all right, I'll let you go there. Okay, sure.
if I'm not aware of that,
Mm-hmm.
then it's very, because everything is pendulum upon that.
Precisely. And until, and remember I said a moment ago, subconscious mind, where this is worked out, your subconscious mind gives you the capacity to see the binary, this and that alignment of your thinking, your critical thinking, because your thinking and your critical thinking are the purpose and meaning for your realistic applications of thought. That is what a mindset ultimately becomes, the realistic application of your thought. In essence, if we take it from its basic psychoanagram, we would say my interactive, normalizing, systemically enforced thinking. That's a mindset. My interactive, normalizing, systemically enforcing thinking. So, as a system, I'm normalizing the conditions and the limitations I encounter. That's understanding. I'm understanding what this and that are, because it's a binary relationship, this or that. I'm either going to do something that is constructive, beneficial, and productive, or I am not. Becomes the interactive quality of assessment and evaluation that critical thinking brings to you. And in essence, people will say, I am thinking so that I can understand conditions and limitations. I'm critically thinking so I can accept what those conditions and limitations are. The moment I accept what something is, Here's the simplicity of it. The moment I accept what something is, I'm not confused by what it's not. Because the moment I've accepted it for what it is, I have defined its meaning and its purpose to me. That is acknowledgement. That is reasoning. The moment I know what this is, I'm not confused by what it's not. And here's the rub, unless I choose to be. And there's where we step into that trap. Unless I choose to be confused by this. So when I say I choose to be confused by this, I activate my subconscious mind's first defense mechanism, which is called denial. This can't be happening. Yes, it is happening because you don't illustrate the degree and depth of trust, confidence, and fluidity that should be present in your acknowledgement of your thinking, your critical thinking and reasoning. It flows. Again, it is normalizing systemically enforced thinking. As a system, you have told yourself to do this. Why have you told yourself to do this? Because every single one of us wants to be the peak level of our capacity for success. That is what survival ultimately is. Go ahead. At our peak level of success. Every one of us wants to be there. Because that means, in essence, that means no matter what it is we encounter in our environmental circumstances, we have both the trust and the confidence to manipulate an outcome result. Manipulate is to do something that is most productive and beneficial for us. That is the instinctive quality of survival is that first instinct, reproduction is that second, and emotional gratification is that third.
You all, we've had a conversation similar to this before, and the audience will hear this conversation later on throughout the year. But what you just talked about, it really brings back some other things that you and I have spoken about. Um, we if what it is we're trying to do is to survive, but we don't know what it takes to survive, because again, survival looks different for different people.
And that is why, as an individual, remember the first the letter M in mindset is my. That sense of ownership, my. Okay? For each individual, he or she has to localize their sensitivities and their sensibilities to
Yeah,
their circumstance and situation.
yeah, but
Everybody survives because everybody has the instinctive capacity to do that. We don't collectively survive for everyone. The
no,
process of
no,
our the process of our survival can be an example for someone else to look at, and someone else by virtue of that can ask us questions about, well, what made you do what you did, what led you to that choice. I mean, you can see that in biographical sketches of individuals all the time.
yeah, but that's gleaning. That's not emulating. That's gleaning. But
And
you know,
this,
because you don't, you're not emulating. You're gleaning, and if you're emulating, you're not really authentically yourself.
you're authentically yourself when you're making the decision to follow a process and a pattern of acknowledgement that success, we'll use the term successful people have utilized. You can
Okay, but again,
you
I'm trying to separate the. I hear what you're saying, and I'm
okay.
trying to separate it from the holistic approach and how I see the how we are all similar. We're all similar, and that we should have a uniqueness in and of ourselves to be able to be driven to understand that we have a responsibility to existence, to this existence that is apart from any individual. And it's indicative, and it should be significant for each and every one of us to possess that. Because I'm saying, when you were saying earlier, I was like, if you don't know, if you don't have an inkling to recognize that productivity is bigger than you, and that's what I'm saying. Where is the bigger picture in this concept of understanding, thinking, critical thinking, the bigger picture to this? Because I'm seeing this as an individual. How do I then translate that to the bigger picture?
Have, as an individual, as a singularity, an individual, you have the same process of expectation of growth and development that every individual as a singularity has. It is the fundamental design from the point of conception until roughly the age of 12 that every singularity, that is the individual, will go through a maturation process that enables him or her to facilitate the way they integrate into their environmental circumstances and situations. How they integrate themselves into their environmental circumstances and situations has everything to do with what is called operational definition. Jean Piaget, one of our greatest educational psychologists, established the fact that operational definition is what becomes the foundation for the causality alignment of existence. The causality. Your existence is a causality. I exist because of a cause. The cause of my existence is the fundamental acknowledgement of the process of thinking, critical thinking, and reasoning
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
intellectually I engage in, so that
Mm-hmm.
behaviorally I can adapt, adjust, and achieve fluidity between my thoughts and my actions. That is what is called, roughly between the ages again of 0 to 12, your core, your central orientation to realistic experiences slash emotion. That becomes your core.
Well, then, if that being the case, then is that's universal, correct?
That is universal. That is
Okay.
endemic to the balance between your mind and your body
Okay.
as it facilitates your spirit.
So why is it that some people can access it and others can't?
Everybody accesses it. The degree to which they are understanding and acknowledging what it is they're accessing and implementing is directly related to the influences that are presented to them during that developmental stage. This is where parenting
Oh,
kicks in high gear.
I
This
get
is
you. I
okay,
get
this
you.
is where the external elements of your environment kick in.
I get it.
Okay.
Then there is no way around that impactful influence in that period in time in your life. There's no way around that.
There's no way around it. You are going to exist in your environmental circumstances.
Okay, so
Okay.
as you then, based on whatever that environment was, let's move 20 years past that. you are still operating unless otherwise deprogrammed
Okay, now be
on that.
careful. Be careful. Be careful. Because even though, and I'll take your 20 years, even though you are still engaging with your circumstances and your situations, you are in a fluid,
Hmm.
integrated
Hmm.
environmental circumstance. Because, see, that's what life is, a
Right.
logical, integrated, fluid environment. Fluid
Right.
means it's not staying consistent, it's not staying fixed
Right. Right.
at this
Got you.
point.
Got
So,
you.
what is for you a fixed point is that core, that central orientation
Hmm.
to the
Hmm.
realistic experiences and the emotions, because that is where you form what become your core beliefs, your core principles, and your core values. It is your beliefs, your principles, and your values that are engaging in the fluidity of this integrated environment. As I become more proficient in that integration, as I become more adaptive to that integration, I'm increasing my level of, and these are key points, I'm increasing my level of trust and confidence in my capacity to adapt and adjust. Charles Darwin would tell you this is why your capacity for survival is enhanced, because you are adapting and adjusting to your environmental circumstances. You're not the smartest, you're not the fastest, you're not the strongest. You're adapting and you're adjusting. And adapting and adjusting is fluidic.
Right. 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 I get it, and
Okay?
I'm with you. But
All right?
it's at that point where you've gained that internally is your normality,
And by
becomes your
being
normality.
And by being your normality, look at what you're saying. By being your normality, it becomes your comparison between this and that.
Yeah, but again, we're talking about wrong, right?
We're
We
talking
could have
about wrong, and we
we
could be
could
talking about right.
Yeah, but the point I'm saying is that you could have been normalized in wrong.
And you could have been, by virtue of your being normalized and wrong, still have the capacity at some point in time to challenge your belief system. That's why it's called growth and development. You grow and you develop. This is why your second instinct, reproduction, becomes so significant.
It goes right back to what I said though. You've got to change. You've got to deprogram to be able to get that past, get that in, because that normality is where your beliefs are. That's where everything is that you're now developing. You're making these choices based on that wrong normality that you now have to be able to determine that's wrong before you can begin to build something that's right.
And you have every opportunity in that period of time between 0 to 12, when it's becoming your belief, your principles, and values, to test drive that. Because when you get to the point of 13 to 17, now you're at that transitional and transformational period where your fourth instinct, an interactive mindfulness, kicks in, and it's that interactive mindfulness that is challenging you to acknowledge whether or not what you are doing is productive and beneficial, because out of that challenge and that engagement emerge your self-esteem, your sense of self, how as a system my emotions are linking me to my feelings. As a system, when I can see that my system is not as effective as it can be, I have the opportunity to evaluate my belief system. And there are two applications that are apparent when an individual is evaluating his or her belief system. And the first of those is, are my beliefs undermining my thinking? Cutting the legs off from under the way I think. Is there something about me that I'm believing that's not making my thinking about me as effective as it can be? Is one of the areas that we look at when we start dealing with what becomes psychotic or psychologically based struggled issues for an individual to deal with. Most commonly, mood disorders, anxiety, and depression. They're the most common.
So this is where you're talking about habitual criminals.
This is where you're talking about the pattern that can lead to habitual criminalization. because your beliefs are underscoring now your thinking. And what does underscore means? They're supporting and girding. So if an
Hmm.
individual begins to believe that the only way that I can succeed is to victimize somebody else, and they repeatedly victimize someone else, then they are establishing a pattern of recognition. This is what criminologists will tell you all day long. The individuals who engage in criminal assessments of behavior, the forensic psychologists, the individuals who are working as forensic technicians with I used to say FBI, but I don't know about them anymore because of where we are. But these are the people who get into the mind of. You've seen on television Criminal Minds. You get into the mindset. How
It
does this
is,
how does this individual do that?
but this is so interesting. I'm sitting on the outside listening to what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking about how the West was won. In the
Okay,
sense that it was like the strong survive,
because
the
they had
fittest,
they had
the
two things going for
survival
them.
of the fittest.
They had two things going for them. The first one was they had what was sometimes referred to as the manifest destiny to believe they should survive, to believe they should own all that's in front of them. They should engage and have dominance over all that's in front of them. You can go all the way back in Judeo-Christian scripture and you can see, go ye forth, multiply, and have dominion over all that has been presented. I'm butchering the words, but you know what I'm talking about. They had the ability to say that there is this vastness. This is Lewis and Clark exploring the West. There is this vastness in front of me, and the only thing that prevents me from engaging in it is me. I can choose to not, or I can choose to engage. I choose. And when I have the courage, when I have the confidence, and when I have the fortitude of my belief system that says, here's Darwin kicking in again, you can adapt and adjust. You can survive in any circumstance. Then the only thing that holds me back is me. And when I look at the broad expanse of the West, I can take this over. I can own this. Now, we have had wars fought behind that behavior, but look at the pattern of it. I'm not going to be structurally limited by. Because, see, that's the key. My beliefs are not going to undermine my thoughts, they are going to undergird, support my thinking. When I argue for a limitation, well, I can't go there because, that's a dark place. I don't want to go there. You don't go there. And why do you not go there? Because you've allowed your fear of going there to be more significant to you than your ability to overcome what fear has presented to you. And the only thing that fear does for you is tell you specifically what it is you have to come to terms with.
You have answered about 8 of my questions.
Okay, that's what I do. This is how
But
I
I didn't
roll.
ask the questions though. And I'm
I'm
just looking,
psychic that
I'm
way.
looking at my questions, right? And I'm going like, can you live your whole life thinking wrong and not know it? You
Yes,
know?
yes, you can live your. And I'm gonna take that question real quick because I want to drive home how that really happens for people. This is what is most commonly referred to as arguing for your limitations so you can own it. Okay? Yeah, I know that this is not the best thing for me to do, but I'm going to do it anyway because I just want to be done with it. I argue for the limitation of not being courageous enough to challenge myself to be better than. So I'll just fake it to make it, is what you sometimes hear people say. They get, well, I know you don't understand what I'm telling you right now. I know it's difficult for you, but just fake it to make it. Just listen to what I'm saying. Just do it. That is one of the most detrimental approaches in developing an individual's internalized trust and confidence in his or her belief system that you can engage in, because that becomes your second instinct of reproducing. You will reproduce that thought pattern. That's reproduction. You will reproduce that and you will become complacent at that level. You'll say, I don't need to challenge myself because all challenging is going to do is draw more attention to me. And I don't want anybody paying more attention to me because my survival becomes threatened because now people will have the expectation that I can do more. I just want to live by my house by the side of the road and be comfortable. I don't want to. No, life is not that way. Life, your survival, your emotional gratification, third instinct, your emotional gratification, what makes you feel good about you. Notice that I moved from emoting to feeling. What makes you feel good about you is overcoming the chief emotion that we must overcome, fear, because it tells you specifically what it is you need to pay attention to. Then if you don't pay attention to it, life has this funky way of constantly bringing it back to you.
It's amazing how that worked, isn't it?
It is because your fourth instinct, interactive mindfulness, is what's holding you to that standard. You've heard it expressed as I think, therefore I am, therefore I think. This is what I did. I get a picture of former President Obama in that gym shooting hoops, and as he's walking out the door, he hits a 3-foot, he hits, a 3-pointer, and he says, this is what I do.
Yeah.
This is what I do. This is what you do.
Mm-hmm.
This is what you do. And when you internalize that in your capacity for unlimited trust and confidence in whom you are, why and how, you've organized, you've oriented, you have operationalized your mindfulness. When you organize that into whom you are, there is nothing you don't have the ability to overcome because you can always adapt and adjust to what it is you need to do as opposed to what you want to do. People argue for what they want to do as opposed to accepting what they need to do.
Yeah. And
There's your
see,
struggle.
you've answered another question in so many times. It says, and that is, if your thinking is normal, why is your life still in chaos?
Because you're not accepting
Yeah.
that your thinking is normal.
Well, that's the point. It says you're thinking that it's normal. And that's the problem, is that you think that it's normal.
Now look at it. When I think that
If
my thoughts are normal, okay? When I think that my thoughts are normal, what I'm actually engaging in is the acceptance that my thinking has integrated normality in my knowledge. Listen to what I just said. Shall I see what I did with think? My thoughts have integrated normality in knowledge. That becomes my world knowledge, my world orientation. I'm thinking that I'm normal. The argument for that is you think that, but are you in effect reinforcing that by the actions that you are taking? Because fundamentally, the moment you understand something, your acceptance of it becomes your acknowledgement of it. So you
and
see
you
what I just said? You start doing, if you accept doing the
you're
wrong thing,
demonstrating it.
you're demonstrating it. You're
And
demonstrating.
that's where, I look at that question as you started to talk about that, and I was like, how do you come to the realization that your thinking is normal when it is associated with chaos? And chaos should be the symbol or the sign that it's your thinking that is the culprit to bring forth the actions of chaos,
Precisely.
or allowing yourself to be involved in that chaos. And that's the association that comes to mind. I'm like, man.
And that should be the association that comes to mind because that is not simpatico with fluidity.
And like I said, Bo, again, the way in which that normal, when you say normal and chaos, they should not be in the same sentence and be considered as a congruent sentence. Meaning, in other words, they are not compatible. They are not compatible. But yet, where do we acceptance comes in the what we accept to allow normal chaos to be normal is we accept chaos.
And by accepting chaos, we facilitate the presence of
Which
chaos.
we're doing ourselves into injustice.
Exactly. You're
Mentally.
arguing for a limitation.
Yeah, but I mean, but it's not even arguing for something that's a limited. We're arguing for something that is accepting. It's really is what I know, and so that's what I accept.
And because I accept it, I argue for that limitation.
Okay. I'm
Okay,
just
see?
I'm just saying. I mean, but I'm just like, when you say argue, I see arguing as that I'm going to be resistant. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. See, internally, remember, internally in your subconscious mind, you're duking
So
this out.
so you are basically, this is internally arguing for a limitation that you're not even aware that's a limitation.
You're not aware that it is a limitation because you have not accepted argument being presented to you. That is why the argument is still being facilitated.
Internally.
Internally, your subconscious mind is telling you the moment that you understand something, you've defined it by its conditions and its limitations. Hold up your ink pen. The difference between the ink pen you have in your hand and the ear jacks that you have on your head is very clear to you, are they not?
Mm-hmm.
There's no argument. You know you can't write with your ear jacks and you cannot hear with your ink pen. You know that. So your expectation would not be to engage them in a pursuit that's not productive. I can't write with the earphones. I can't hear with the ink pen. So how do I adjust my thinking? By accepting that.
Let's use something very similar. Let's use something that is relevant to this conversation then. Let's use something like drug or alcohol abuse.
Okay, now be careful because alcohol is a drug.
Okay, well,
Okay, all right.
let's use alcohol. That's in general.
Okay, all right.
If it is not what does it take for a person to recognize or to see that that's a limitation?
By getting that person to accept the meaning and purpose of a limitation. See, the moment
Specifically, let's go specifically on alcohol.
okay, then you need to accept that alcohol is a limitation in your life. Why is alcohol a limitation in your life? How many times have you had a DUI? How many times have you been passed over for some promotion or some position at work because people are concerned about your ability to be sober at work? How many times have you been cautioned by your supervisors? You come in and you smell like the brewery down the block. We can't, that's not the image that we want to have here. How many times has it been brought to your attention?
No, but here's what I'm saying though. So what you're saying then, that is there no universal limitation or limitation? So because that's individual, that's personalized.
Okay, well, we're talking about a person.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, in the sense of being, when you made a limitation, you said, is it your limitation? You're arguing for your limitation,
Yeah,
or
because
you're arguing a limitation?
you're when I say arguing your limitation, then you are arguing for
Your limitation and not limitations in general.
not limitation. We're talking about an individual right now.
Well, yeah, I get it, but
Okay.
we're talking about a circumstance, not an individual,
No,
an
we're talking
issue.
about a behavioral responsivity that an individual is demonstrating.
So it is a limit. It is an individual limitation that we refer when we say a limitation. It's an individual limitation,
Because
not a universal limitation.
who's presenting a limitation? It's universal because it is operationally defined as something you, as an individual, must consider as a part of your environmental exposure. Alcohol is out there for everybody to see. Alcohol is out there for everybody to use. Alcohol is out there, period. You choose. You choose. And the moment you put yourself in a position where you have made that choice, you have individualized that choice. So, I can sit here all day long and talk to you about alcoholism, but until you decide that you are going to be accountable and responsible for your decision to do A instead of B, it is still going to be your argued for limitation. And that's the argument that's taking place inside you. If I've done my job, if I have shown you the A and the B, because that's what understanding is. Here's the condition, here's the limitation. You choose. You choose, and that is acceptance. My choice is my acceptance to argue, to hold on to that limitation, or argue to let it go. And I use the term argue because it is that significant a change in your thinking and your critical thinking's process. That's why it's called critical thinking.
I think that's where I needed you to go, because I needed to be able to see that there's a choice to this limiting, this arguing for your limitations,
Hmm?
because everybody don't have the same limitation.
Everybody does not.
But we all have limitations.
Precisely right.
But we don't all have the same limitations. And before we can not argue for our own limitation, we have got to identify that limitation that we have. And that in turn needs to be understood, that has to not proceed arguing that limitation. Because
That's
without
correct.
without that awareness,
Mm-hmm.
we are literally falling into a state, or based on this conversation, that we are operating on normal, that we have been birthed to a certain degree into that normality. Because if you grew up watching your parents drink alcohol day after day after day after day, not seeing the ramifications, not understanding the ramifications, because my needs being met, but all you do is you see mom and daddy come home every day, drink, but don't see mom and dad being beat up in the bedroom, and still come out with a black eye. You don't see any of that.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
I'm just using that as an analogy,
Yeah.
that I'm not seeing the impact, but I'm seeing the limitation. I'm seeing this thing, and then come to find out that I have that same limitation. I have to recognize it as my limitation. And I'm not saying that that's the only way that you might get that limitation.
No.
But I'm saying that that's just the dynamic that you're going to be confronted with, to get to the point of being, oh, this is my my belief, my limited, my arguing my own beliefs, my own limited
And well,
beliefs.
and welcome to that point that is called acceptance in your thinking.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, because until you accept it, until you accept it, whatever it is,
The combination is that awareness to acceptance. Yeah,
if you
yeah.
don't, then you can't, you will not act on it. You can't act on it because you are intellectually and cognitively accepting negative thinking as a
No,
process of the norm. Okay? Yeah, I can't do anything about that. Every time you say can't do anything about that, you're accepting negativity.
no, but I'm just saying, not even
Mhm.
aware that it's at this point. I'm just not even aware that it's something that I should be. I have to be
Now,
aware of.
here's the rub.
Because
The,
I don't know it as being negative. You know what I'm saying?
uh-huh.
I have no reason to think that this is a negative limitation.
Until you finally reach that point, as you will, because it's called your third instinct, emotional gratification, until you finally reach that point where you
Man,
realize that, wait a minute, um, Joe over there is not having the same kind of issues I'm having. Why is Susie over there able to talk about her struggle freely and I can't? What is it about me? See, now I'm doing that internal introspectiveness
hmm
that emotional awareness speaks to. You see, third instinct, emotional awareness. Emotion is that point where you are now in a circumstance or situation where something that was happening a moment ago was not occurring in the context you're in now. And that's what emotions do. They draw your attention to something is telling me that my circumstance has changed. Emotional alertness and awareness now motivates you, and motivating is where feeling takes over the wheel, driving the car, to feel the significance of this difference in my life. What do you do with that? What do you do with these feelings? How do you channel these feelings into the acknowledgement of what a changed state looks like? Is the challenge that exists. That's the theory and system behind the treatment method that we call ABC. Your
hmm
attitudes, your beliefs, your choices, your activating events, your behaviors, and their consequences. How do you see those factors playing into the productivity or lack thereof in the quality of your life?
Okay.
Becomes the instantaneous point that you are now fixating on, because this is where your fourth instinct, interactive mindfulness, is presenting you with the opportunity to resolve this. Interactive mindfulness.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Um, One question. Here we go. We're going to try to get a couple questions in
Oh,
before
okay.
we go today. When do when did we start trusting feelings more than truth?
We started trusting feelings more than truth at that very point that we just described a moment ago, when we did not engage in the clarity and definition of thinking and critical thinking to our reasoning. Reasoning is that point you're talking about, when we start accepting that as truth. Well, this is the way it's always happened, so this is the way it's always going to be. That's my reasoning. I always have dumb luck because I just can't get past it. Okay, you're arguing for the limitation. That's your
hmm
reasoning. Your reasoning behind me is to tell me that you are punking out on your ability to resolve this issue. And rather than man up or woman up to it, you argue for it. Well, there's nothing I can do about that. Well, it's just life. Okay, that is that point.
That's where we start trusting our feelings more than trusting our truth.
And we reinforce that. And the more we reinforce that, here's how your fourth instinct, interactive mindfulness, starts beating you up. Everything that you do now becomes the struggle to reinforce that faulty belief. Because see, when a belief is faulty, the relationship between your mind and body, realize it, because the pivotal point, the fixed point between mind and body, the pivotal point is your spirit, is those things that give you a quality of life that's rewarding and beneficial. You feel good about yourself. You feel that you have the ability to rise to whatever your expectation is. Your mind, your body, and your spirit becomes that triad event. When the mind and the body are struggling, the spirit will reflect that. Because you now see it in the attitude, the beliefs, and the choices. What is the activating event? I'm not accepting what I understand. What is the behavior? The struggle is show you that I'm not accepting what I understand. And what become the consequences of that choice? The resultant becomes that choice.
Yeah.
You see what you're doing.
Let's piggyback on that. How often do people protect their feelings at the cost of their growth?
Not protecting their feelings deny the meaning and purpose of their feelings at the cost of their growth. And that is directly related to what we were just discussing a moment ago. How many times does it take for you to step, or better yet, how many times does it take for you to put your hand on a hot stove, get burned, and realize the stove is hot?
Yeah.
How many times you got to do the same thing over and over? Because that's what you're doing. How many times do you have to do the same thing over and over and over again and realize that you don't get a different outcome result before you realize you don't get a different outcome result is exactly what this struggle is about. Because the moment you finally get that different result, it's like that big light bulb moment that flashes over your head. You pop yourself in the forehead and say, Eureka, I finally see what it is I'm doing.
Let me ask you, answer so many of the questions I have here. Here's one. What scares people more, being wrong or having to change?
The responsibility and the accountability to admit that they are wrong. Because see, change doesn't happen until you admit the existence of something that you're altering from or you're moving away from. So until you've accepted, you're not afraid. You're not afraid. You're not afraid because you're trying to minimize your responsivity to fear. You're trying to minimize your response to the thing that's telling you, hey man, this is what you got to. That's why it's a core belief. This is what you got to do. Because you believe it, you can achieve it. Because habitually you drive yourself to accomplish what it is you tell yourself to do. I tell myself to be myself, and don't be surprised when you are yourself because of that active, responsive engagement that comes with that. Actively and responsibly engaging. You are this, actively and responsibly engaging. Until you do that, you won't be that.
Let's connect the love mindset here. If thinking correctly is thinking with the love mindset, what does that actually look like in a real life?
Very simple. What is love? It is a living, organic, vibrant emotion. Look at living and organic. So that means that in everything that it is you do, you are going to get the emotionalized satisfaction of realizing this is everything I can do. And the more you emote and feel the connection between your emotion and your feeling, see where they end and where they begin. The moment you see that is the moment you can constantly achieve that because you're telling yourself, interactive mindfulness. You're telling yourself to believe that you can actively, responsibly engage in that. And that leads you to your fifth emotion, your fifth instinct rather, which is the resultant of having resolved this struggle emotionally. You transition and you transform. You transition away from any self-doubt. You transition away from any fear of failure, and by virtue of that, you transform your entire attitude and perspective on what your life is about.
You know, you answered all of my questions under this category now because you actually answered all. I said, can love correct thinking without making people feel attacked? Can love correct thinking without making people feel attacked?
Absolutely. Who? It's the very simple acknowledgement of who do you love? Yourself. You can't love anybody until you love yourself. Because you can't make the sacrifice to love somebody without acknowledging the purpose and meaning of what love in your life is. You can't argue for that. This is the thing that is so phenomenal about first responders. They go running towards the fire. They're doing that thing that says greater love have no person than to lay down their life for another. They realize how essential life is to the body human, and they're willing to sacrifice their existence to ensure that someone else has the ability to exist. What greater sense of connectivity and interoperability in a communal setting is that? And that's what community, a sense of community, is supposed to be predicated on. This is why the African proverb says it takes a village to raise a child, but it takes the child to raise the village.
Hmm. One more question: is self-expression today just undisciplined thinking?
Is
Just
self
is self-expression today just is just undisciplined thinking
is self expression today
today?
just
Just
undisciplined
undisciplined
thinking?
thinking.
It depends on the classification of. Okay, I'm not going to get too technical because we're getting close to the end. It depends on the context. What are the circumstances of your self expression? Because somebody can be so angry and so frustrated and so furious with themselves that internalized explosion and eruption will tell the trained observer what the real issue here is. You're not mad at that teacher for calling you out. You're mad at yourself for not being prepared to answer the question that was being asked of you. This is why you pick the chair up and you throw it, because the moment I pick that chair up and throw it, I know I'm going to have to be removed from this situation. So
I
see,
can relate.
I can, you can, okay, you can
I
relate.
can, I can relate. I mean, you're talking about frustration.
You're talking about frustration and anxiety.
Hmm.
The
Hmm.
anxiety. See,
And
you're sitting there in that classroom anxious already because there's a 50-50 probability that I'm going to get called on to do something. So I'm
yep.
anxious all the time. And I'm
Hmm.
hyper anxious. I'm hyper vigilant.
Hmm.
So,
Yep.
this is when people start talking about short fuses and all of that stuff. Trigger points. You know, if I understand and can accept, then I can acknowledge what needs to be done. And that's always going to be the process to healing.
I want to leave the audience with just some questions for thought.
Okay.
And the thoughts are: if your thinking is producing your life, do you like what it's producing?
There we go.
That's one of the things. And then the other question is, what if what if the problem isn't your situation, it's your mindset? That
And
that that that's another for them to think on. That's enough for them to think on.
yeah, but again, see, that's a tricky one because
Go
it is
ahead.
your mindset that creates the situation.
Yeah, and the thing about it, okay, so in other words, yeah, okay, so
Yeah,
let's that's a duality type of thing
that's a
there.
duality. Yeah, exactly.
Here's another one. How long will you call it normal before you admit it's hurting you?
And therein lies the internal question that is the bugaboo for anybody who finally gets to the point where they want to realize that there's something happening to me that I need to go talk to someone about.
Hmm.
That is what gets them in my office. They finally get to the point where all of the other excuses, all of the other roadblocks, all the other impediments are exhausted now. The boss told me I got to come in here and talk to you, or I'm going to get fired. Okay. What do you want to talk about? Tell me what's going on. And see, that's the dialogue that is opened up. But, how much
It's the
pain do you
question.
want to take?
It's the question that everybody has to think about. And the last one, for the sake of being here on the philosophy of love, is what if love isn't just the answer, but it's the standard for how you think? It's the standard for how you think.
And by standard, it becomes exactly what mindset
That
has as its key point. And that mindset's key point is normalization, normalizing, normalizing. As a system, it normalizes you.
that life experience.
That life experience.
I tell you, you put a lot in there. I had like 20 questions, and you answered them all, and asked about one question, you answered them all. But that was what this is all about. And
Absolutely.
hopefully the listener will be able to hear. If you have any questions about what you've heard today, by all means put them in the chat. Let's leave some comments. Let us know if it's something that you heard that you want more insight or information about. You can reach out to Dr. Brockington by coming to, just look at clearjourney.org, info@clearjourney.org. You can send an email there, put Dr. Brockington's name in there, and he'll get back to you.
Absolutely.
That is what we're here to help you navigate this thing called life as clearly and as easy. Now, I say easy, I say as simple. I hate going on the easy. It's as simple as we possibly can.
Yeah.
But if there's any questions that you might have, let us know, because we're here to help you. We're here to help you navigate this thing called life. This has been a tremendous episode.
Oh, yeah.
And you all will hear more of this coming up. But this is really what it's about. It's really about making life, the love mindset, practical, making it simple, making it easy for you to understand that there is a way to navigate this thing called life.
Precisely. Yep.
Instead of having to figure it out with the hard knocks. But even if you get caught in a ditch, love can get you out. You can get out of it with the right mindset.
That's precisely right.
You can get out of it.
One of my professors used to say the same shovel that you use to dig the hole is the same shovel you can use to dig out.
Well, as long as you got the shovel, because I hope you didn't dig the shovel and throw it out the hole. Dig the hole and throw it out the hole.
Ask me how many times I've had those.
Well, yeah, you dug your hole and then threw the shovel out the hole.
Show you how determined I am to stay locked in this position. Okay,
I mean, because come on now, think about it. If you can dig down, you can dig laterally.
Hey,
if you dig laterally, you're gonna eventually get parallel again to wherever that surface level is.
There you go.
Anyway, but that's a concept, man.
Hey.
Well, hey y'all, this is The Grain. It's the end of this episode. We ran over a little bit, but we really enjoy you being here with us. We hope you come back and enjoy and listen again. But like I said, if there's anything that you want to know that we haven't spoken, let us know. Give us some feedback. We're here for you. All righty. Until next time, as usual, we can't change life, but we can help you navigate it right here on the Philosophy of Love. Until next time, we'll see you later.
Thank you for watching this episode. Take a moment to head over to our social media platforms, connect with us, and leave a comment. We'd also love it if you would subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, head over to clearjourney.org for more great resources. We'll see you next time on the Philosophy of Love podcast.